Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. We regularly dedicate pretty much every day the meal offering time, the anumodana. Almost every single day there are requests for us to dedicate blessings for people. Here this evening, also dedicating the chanting for someone who's seriously ill. Sometimes the request for blessings is somebody's birthday, or somebody's off to college, or such like. But the majority is people who are seriously ill, people who have passed away. And that gesture of, say, dedicating blessings and bringing forth a heart of goodwill is very much not just a part of a tradition, but a part of our practice, that of, say, inclining towards loving kindness, the development of metta, which is, one of the four sublime abidings, the sublime or divine states of mind, the Brahma Viharas. I feel it's good to reflect on that, loving kindness and the importance of that, and all of the sublime abidings in our lives. And we don't just have these as sort of customs, as this is what you're supposed to do in a Buddhist monastery or a community, or this is just a kind of cultural habit or something that is followed as an obligation, but rather it's part of a whole tone of our lives, strongly encouraged by the Buddha in so many aspects of his teaching. I appreciate that most of the people here will be very familiar with things like the four sublime abidings. We use this kind of language that most people say, "Oh, yes, I know what that is: loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, equanimity." I've read about them. Well, this is familiar territory for us as monastics or long-term Buddhist practitioners. Other people who are new to the practice, new to Buddhist languaging of things, this might be a bit novel or sort of new, but these are our central principles in our practice. So I thought it might be helpful, useful to explore and to, say, spell out some of the aspects of this area of our spiritual life, spiritual training, and why the Buddha put so much store in this, or why he made it so important. Well, as loving kindness, what we metta, is, say, repeated, addressed, talked about over and over and over again as a sort of fundamental attitude that is encouraged, the sort of way you approach other beings, the way you approach your own body, your own life, your own mind, your own heart, your own spiritual practice. One of the things that is, say, an issue or an aspect of, say, thinking about these areas or exploring these areas is that it's tricky to find a perfect translation or a really accurate way of rendering things in English that matches the principle that is embodied there in the Pali original. Many years ago, when Luang Por Sumedho first started coming to teach here in the UK in the 1970s, he would use the loving kindness or universal love as a way of translating metta, and he found that it was something that turned people off somewhat. That it was not something that people sort of could relate to very much, or found irritating or off-putting, because using the word love, he found, as he asked people, when they say, "I really like your teaching, Ajahn Sumedho, but all this stuff about metta, this loving kindness, it's really smarmy, or it's really a bit too sort of sentimental, sugary and sweet." And he realized, well, actually, when we talk about love, we hear it in English as something that's the same as liking. And he realized that's a mistake that we're making, because you can love something completely and not like it at all. You can have loving kindness for something which is not likable. And so he quite deliberately started talking about loving kindness as, talking about metta as not dwelling in aversion. And that, he said, and that made a lot more sense to people. So I feel that both of those aspects are kind of metta, of an outgoing well-wishing towards other beings, as well as a receptive quality. These are two very important and significant and some kind of distinct aspects of loving kindness. And so that, I think, first of all, to understand that when we're cultivating metta, we're to repeat Luang Por Sumedho's the comments that he's made hundreds of times. We're not trying to make ourselves like the unlikable. He would say if there's a lot of noise coming from the neighbors that is making it difficult to concentrate in your meditation, or the person in the next room, it's not likable, but you can find a place in your heart where there is non-contention against it, where the mind is not moving towards hate. So you can be open to, you can be accepting to that which is not likable, but you don't have to pile hate upon it. So that the way I like to talk about this is that metta has both a receptive quality, an openness of heart. So I like to use the term a radical acceptance with that, with respect to metta in that way. But it does have that outgoing quality, that well-wishing. So when we dedicate the chanting and say, bring forth someone's name or their face or their memory, and there is a definite outgoing quality, an expressive quality, a kind of generating in the heart, an intention towards goodwill. So I feel both it's good when considering and contemplating what loving kindness is, that it embodies both of those aspects. And I like to compare it to the breath, that we have the in-breath is the receptive. You're breathing in the oxygen that the body needs to keep itself alive, to keep the vitality going. But then there's also the out-breath. There's the expression. There's the literally express means to press out or to release, and so that the practice of metta involves both that expressive and receptive quality. Well, one of the things that you find in Buddha Dhamma, in many of the Buddha's teachings, as people are also probably very well aware, the Buddha made many lists of qualities. So these four sublime abidings, the divine abidings, Metta, Karuna, Mudita, Upekkha, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, serenity, equanimity, is not always the case. It's not universal, but as a rule of thumb, they tend to go from the most coarse or tangible or personal to the more refined or non-personal. So metta, loving kindness, may all beings be, may I abide in well-being, and may everyone abide in well-being. That's kind of tangible and personal, and sort of relatable. And at the more refined end, you have upekkha, equanimity or serenity, and the reflections on that, the development of equanimity around considering and looking at the cause and effect is much more, say, detached or non-personal. Similarly, with the list of the five aggregates, the five aspects of body and mind. He starts off with rupa, material form, the body, the first one, and then the last one on the list is sense consciousness, vijnana. Or you have with the four foundations of mindfulness. Not to fill the evening with lists and lists of lists, but say the four foundations of mindfulness. It starts off with mindfulness of the body, and it ends off with mindfulness of Dhammas, or mindfulness, seeing things in terms of Dhamma. So they generally start off with the most coarse or tangible or personal, and then at the other end of the list is the most sort of refined or non-personal. Or also with the 10 paramitas, it starts off with the 10 spiritual perfections. Starts off with dana, generosity, at the very beginning, and then upekkha, equanimity, serenity, is the 10th on the list. So with these four sublime states, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, joy at the good fortune of others, and serenity, equanimity, upekkha, you have a similar kind of spectrum going from the most sort of personal or tangible to the most refined, I would say. Again, I'm making these comments. I'm not trying to say, this is the one and only way these things should be understood or reflected upon, or this is the sort of definitive way of relating to these. But these are just reflections offered for consideration and how I've tended to see things, and it seems to be a practical and realistic understanding of what the Buddha was saying and how he was putting it together. So metta, and just as again, anyone who's been around Buddhist monasteries, teachings, retreats for any amount of time will tend to be aware that of these four qualities, these four aspects of the divine abidings, or these bright, wholesome, radiant states of mind. Many of us have done whole retreats on loving kindness, or at least having a day of loving kindness teachings or particular talks on loving kindness. But it's much rarer to have a talk about or a whole retreat on compassion, or upon. I never even heard of a retreat on mudita, or a whole retreat or guided meditations on equanimity. They're much rarer. So loving kindness is much more personal, much more tangible, much more relatable for most people, and that's like mindfulness of the body. It's the most sort of obvious, tangible. It's kind of the best, most practical place to start. It's a helpful entry point. So with respect to loving kindness, then is a conscious generation of well-wishing toward, as we do in the sort of the chants that we have in the chanting book, the sort of classical or standard reflections for that. May I abide in well-being. Ahang sukhito homi. May I be well. May I be happy. And then that goes on to, may all beings be happy, sabbe sata sukhita hontu. May all beings be happy. So first of all, generating loving kindness towards this being, and then towards all beings. So consciously inclining the mind towards a sense of well-wishing and a positive, accepting, a tolerant attitude, a respectful attitude, an accepting attitude towards all beings, towards this being, and towards states of mind. But in particular, towards other beings as a sort of skillful ground of, okay, and starting from the kind of again from a personal perspective. Which many of the classical reflections do, like, I am the nature to age. It starts off with an I am. It's like starting from the basis of, yes, we tend to attach to self-view. I'm a person, this is my name, this is who I am, I'm a woman, I'm a man, I live here, I'm this, so many years old, and this is my name, and so on. We tend to start off from that kind of assumptions of individuality, self-view. And so many of these reflections begin in the same way. So, ahang sukhito homi, may I be happy. Ahang, I am, may I be happy. And sabe sata sukhita hontu, may all beings be happy. So it starts off from a kind of a personal and tangible place. And so it's establishing that ground or intention of acceptance, tolerance, receptivity, and again to underscore that to have loving kindness for all beings, having loving kindness for all aspects of yourself, doesn't mean that we're trying to make ourselves like every aspect of our own being or every aspect of other beings. I might not like my anxiety or it's my feelings of jealousy or ambition or irritation. They're not likable, but they might arise. they come into being. They take shape. They do their thing. They might be either attitudes that are unwelcome or unwholesome, but here they are. Or like physical pain, injuries, and illnesses. We don't ask for them. We don't like them, but here they are. They arise. This is what's part of our human life, our living experience. And so that as a universal attitude, an attitude that is beneficial towards every single being, the starting point that the Buddha encourages us, to have that sense of well-wishing and a radical acceptance for all beings, all states of mind, this being all other beings. Then as you go along the spectrum, the next one along, karuna, loving kindness. So metta is about letting go of our habits of irritation or aversion or judgment or blaming ourselves or others, and the mind that sort of criticizes and complains. It's sort of letting go of, or an intention to let go, a conscious inclination to not follow the habits of divisiveness or complaining or irritation or aversion to our aches, our pains, our shortcomings, or the noises and sights and sounds and people or beings around us. Here in the UK, we don't have a lot of insect life. Oppressing our lives. If any of you who've lived in a forest monastery in Southeast Asia, that our body is a food source that mosquitoes and many other beings like to feed on a regular basis, so that it's often not the other monks in the monastery that you have most aversion for, but the mosquitoes are eating you every night during the meditation and through the day in your kuti. So the conscious, so working against those habits or the tendency towards irritation, aversion, or blaming, like if only there weren't these mosquitoes, then I would be happy. Or like Lumpur Sumedho would often talk about his early experience in Thailand, that he would find his mind saying things, if God really loved humanity, he would never have created mosquitoes. These kind of things. This kind of thought that can easily arise in your mind. And I know here in the UK we have our own things that are easy to feel averse to. It can be the weather or the lockdown, the different circumstances, different things. The way the routines are worked out for the washing up. Whatever it might be, it's easy for the mind to move towards reasonable complaint, irritation, upset and blaming. So the intention towards loving kindness is saying, well, yes, even though me being on the rota again, or me not being able to travel again, is irritating, it's painful, there's a feeling of frustration, I don't have to dwell in aversion to it. Here it is. It's like this. This is the way it is in this moment. So consciously inclining from that. With compassion, it's there's a conscious letting go of concern about your own suffering, your own difficulty, your own painfulness. In many respects, and paying attention and consciously cultivating an empathy for the suffering of other beings. So in the classical chanting that we do, the verses that are repeated over and over in the suttas, it's like, may all beings be free from all suffering, is one of the most common ways it's expressed. So it's that inclination to compassion. Okay, there's suffering being felt here, but look at the dukkha, the difficulty that other beings experience. How sorrowful, how sad, and what pain other beings feel. So it's a conscious, intention to steer away from kind of focusing on sort of getting away from your own dukkha and not experiencing dukkha in this being, but say a conscious appreciation or an empathizing with the pain and difficulty of others. Again, the word compassion, rather like loving kindness, doesn't quite work in English, because compassion comes from the English word compassion comes from the Latin passio, means, and the passio, pas in Latin means to suffer. So it means so the English word compassion literally means to suffer with. But karuna is a great brightness. It's not a state of pain, and so that to be suffering yourself on account of the suffering of others is like a distorted compassion, or is a kind of misunderstanding or a misholding of karuna. And that the word empathy is more accurate, slightly, somewhat closer. I've been hunting for years for the perfect English word to encompass that, but I haven't quite managed to track anything down as yet. But it's a wholehearted appreciation of the pain and sorrow, difficulty of others, but yet not suffering on account of that. In the Northern Buddhist tradition, there's the bodhisattva called Avalokiteshvara, in Chinese, Guanxiyin Pusa. Forgive my bad pronunciation. In Tibetan, Chenrezig, but Sanskrit is Avalokiteshvara. And the translation of the name of that bodhisattva, which represents the embodiment of compassion, kanon in Japanese. Again, forgive my bad pronunciation. This means the one who listens to the sounds of the world. So that so that quality of receptivity is, again, pointed to or part of that quality of compassion, and that then on the basis of that receptivity, that listening, that receptivity to the cries of the world, then there's the responsivity, the action of helping in some of the classical imagery. You have 1,000. Avalokiteshvara has 1,000 hands with an eye in the middle of each hand, and so it's 1,000 eyes, 1,000 hands that are ready to reach out and help in various sort of benign or fierce or thoughtful, effective ways to respond to other beings. But it's not a state of suffering. So it's helpful to then consider that this is like the development of karuna is an appreciation of the suffering of others, but not making it into a state of suffering within your own heart, which is tricky, challenging to do. And I grew up. I was a very tearful child. I've mentioned it a few times. I did a lot of crying from the age of from birth probably up to at least sort of 11 or 12 years old. I was a very tearful child, and And when I came across other beings, other people that were suffering, then I tended to make it my responsibility that if I could only find the right thing to do, or if only I could try harder, then this person, this being, wouldn't be suffering. And because I can't do enough, or I can't say enough, or I can't do the right thing, they're continuing to suffer. So therefore, their suffering is my fault. So, that wasn't the only reason I was crying, but often. That was I was very, very easily upset and moved to tears. I wasn't allowed to watch the film Bambi, and there was a record, a single that was called, I think, "A Little Dog Cried," and I wasn't allowed to listen to that either, because I would have been inconsolable for days or weeks. I was about 4 or 5 years old. But I didn't see Bambi till I was about 37. It's true. I mean, I wasn't avoiding it at that point, but the circumstance. But when I saw it on an aeroplane. I thought, oh, that's why they didn't want me to see it. Bambi's mother, the little fawn, the baby deer's mother, getting shot at the beginning of the film. So anyway. So then mudita, mudita then, so the first three, metta, karuna, and mudita, are all sort of strongly personal. Mudita then is a conscious inclination to appreciate the happiness, the good fortune of others, and not to dwell upon your own happiness, like the sort of, because we tend to be glad when things go our way, like, yes, I got the last piece of cake, yes, there was enough for me, great. Or yes, I got the room that I wanted in the vihar, or yes, I got to get in the car on the town trip, whatever it might be. Yes, it's a sunny day, and I've got a day off, and I can go out. So we tend to, when we're attached and see things from a worldly level, a personal level, we focus on me getting what I want, and that's good. So mudita is going against personal gratification and focusing on that of me getting what I want as the absolute good, but looking towards the others and consciously inclining towards the appreciation of the happiness of others. And so, and again, this is not a categorical statement, but for many people, compassion is a little bit harder to cultivate than loving kindness, and then mudita is a little bit harder to cultivate than compassion. Yeah, if you go to a spiritual bookshop, I would imagine if they have the number of books on loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, equanimity would be a kind of diminishing number of what would sell. I'm prepared to be corrected by any book publishers or booksellers, but it looks to be that way. So loving kindness is pretty big, compassion is pretty big, but not quite as big, and so on. So mudita is a rare commodity. And when I'm giving examples, I say the kind of thing, well, if you're driving a car and you come up to a junction, when your light goes red, you feel happy for the person whose light just turned green. How common is that? Or you're coming into a car park at the airport, and then a car in front of you takes the very last space on that floor. You feel happy that, oh my goodness, how nice, that person found a parking space. I'll have to keep driving around for a little while to find one myself, but I'm so happy that this good person managed to find a place to put their car. It's not our first thought. I'm not reading anybody's mind. Like, if you think, how did you know that? Statistically, it's very, very likely. Mudita is then that, so that if you think of it as a if people open your eyes and watch my finger, it's like what they call a sine wave. So if you start off at the sort of base level, loving kindness is here at the sort of the base level, then there's mood and difficulty and pain is sort of the karuna is sort of dealing with feelings on the downswing. Then as it goes up to the top of the sine wave, to happiness and success and good fortune, and then it comes down to kind of upekkha, equanimity, so back on the baseline. Again, this is one of the ways I've thought of that sort of working together with the way life is. So mudita is challenging, but it's in the chanting that we do, may all beings not be parted from the good fortune they have attained. And so to me, it's also about counteracting the things we are addicted to, the things that we get our happiness from, in terms of sense consciousness, like sense pleasures of particular kinds, or mental activity, or even concentrated mind states or blissful mind states. It doesn't have to be a coarse sensual object like sounds that we hear or things that we taste or things to look at, but rather it can be referring to refined mind states that we are greedy for or possessive of and get totally focused on. So I feel that cultivating mudita is also a lot about letting go of that addiction to chasing what we like, and also compassion, I would say, is letting go of an obsession on trying to fix everything or fix everyone, or feeling it's our personal responsibility to make suffering go away for all beings, and taking it very, very personally. So mudita is challenging to cultivate, but then maybe upekkha is, for many people, it's very, very hard to relate to at all, because again, not to complain about English translations, but equanimity has got a bit of a flat quality to it. It's easily translatable as indifference, and there are some places in the Pali Canon also where the word upekkha is used to mean I don't care. It's an indifferent attitude, really whatever. It's a sort of a bland not caring. But upekkha, as the great brightness, and sort of the most refined of these great brightnesses of the heart, abundant, exalted, immeasurable. These are the ways that the Brahma Viharas are described: abundant, exalted, immeasurable. It's not about indifference. It's not about not caring, but it's more about a steadiness of heart, or a stillness of heart in the midst of agitation or turbulence. So and I would say this is where it's much less personal. It's not like me having loving kindness for you, or me having compassion for you, or me having sympathetic joy for your happiness, but rather it's again, I'm not trying to be categorical about it, but reflecting on it, it's much less personal, more to do with the general agitation and busyness of the world and the things around us, or the things that make up our experiential field. So the development of upekkha in the teachings, in that, again referring to that sort of the classical verses and chants that we do, it's a very clear change of mood. So you have may I abide in well-being, may everyone abide in well-being is loving kindness, metta. May all beings be released from all suffering is karuna. May all beings not be parted from the good fortune they have attained is mudita. But upekkha, serenity, is a reflection on cause and effect. It's sort of a very clear change of gears. It doesn't mention other beings in such it mentions other beings, but not in the same kind of mode or tone, I would say. And the reflection on to develop upekkha is all beings are the owners of their karma, related to their karma, abide supported by their karma. Whatever karma they shall do, or for good or for ill, of that they will be the heirs. These kind of, if this is done, that happens. If this is done, that happens. So it's there's a kind of a stepping back, I would say. There's a kind of that shift of gear, and I would say what that also represents, even though it's an emotional state, it's like these are very refined. These four Brahma Viharas are, if you like, sort of supremely wholesome emotions, and the sort of purified or wholesome, skillful emotional states. That equanimity in this sort of in its basic level is an emotional state, but it's a doorway to insight. It's really a doorway to wisdom, I would say, and it's in a sense. I also feel it's a kind of an extension of that quality of loving kindness, about a radical acceptance, or openness of heart. And similarly with karuna and mudita, when they're sort of taken to their fulfillment, they're supporting this quality of upekkha, this sense of a total openness to the way things are. So whatever the world is doing, whatever is happening in the experiential field, whether it's a memory or a mood or an external event, however much the world is sort of shaking and doing its thing, there's a stillness in the midst of that, and that cultivation of the reflection on cause and effect. Whatever is done, whatever this being chooses to do, then there's a result. This is the cause, this is the effect, this is the cause. It's the natural order. So it's a way of moving from a personal perspective to a Dhamma-centered perspective. It's all Dhamma niyamata, functioning according to the laws of nature. This is how nature works. This is the cause, this is the effect. Hooray! Or this is the cause, this is the effect. Ow! Or this is the cause, this is the effect. Yeah, no comment, no involvement, not anything I need to tie the heart to, or as in the wonderful Polish expression, "Not my circus, not my monkeys," which is it's a theme for a Sunday afternoon talk a couple of years ago. "Not my circus, not my monkeys" is an extremely wise Polish folk saying that is a very accurate representation of this, an entry point to upekkha. So, and I also feel this is one of the reasons why in many teaching upekkha, that serenity is really the final word of many of these teachings. As I said, it's the last on the list. It's the 10th of the 10 paramitas. It's the 7th of the 7 factors of enlightenment. It's the 4th of the 4 Brahma Viharas. It's like very much the final word on these wholesome qualities, because it's a genuine gateway to wisdom. And I also feel it's very closely related to the mindfulness of mind states, what's called the fourth of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, Dhammanupassana, which is about seeing things in terms of Dhamma. If you look at the teaching on mindfulness of breathing, the Anapanasati Sutta, then it looks at the breath in terms of the 4 foundations of mindfulness: mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of feeling, mindfulness of moods or mind states, and then mindfulness in terms of change. So that when the 4 foundations of mindfulness are talked about in terms of the breath, then when the Buddha speaks of that, is the 4th one is all about watching the changing quality, the fluid, vibratory, transient quality of the breath. So it's very, again, it's a change of gear from the first 3 of the 4 foundations, and it's a conscious movement from sort of focusing on an object to looking at the process of experience itself. Again, there are many different opinions and views about interpreting the 4 foundations of mindfulness, but that's how it appears in my understanding perspective. So that and that is that quality of sort of stepping back from the whole field of experience, and to know its changing, vibratory quality, its fluid, transient, anicca quality. That's the gateway to insight, the gateway to the development of wisdom. Just as I say, we were chanting the Dhammacakka Sutta this evening, and it's very lovely wonderful to be able to chant together in a group after a year or so of not doing that, and in these recent weeks to be chanting together. But in that teaching, when the Buddha has given the teaching on the middle way and the Four Noble Truths, and then Kandanya, his companion friend, is with the other four companions in the deer park, have been sort of listening to the Buddha's words. It's Kandanya who understands what the Buddha is saying and gets the point. And then it describes the insight arising in the mind, in the heart of Kandanya as he gets it. And the way it's phrased, that entering of the stream, that awakening to Dhamma, in that teaching and many other places, yankinchi samudaya dhammang sabantang nirodha dhammanti. Whatever is subject to arising is subject to cessation. If it arises, it passes away. That also represents this stepping back from the whole field of experiences and being able to in a sense embody that stillness of knowing at the center, and say, well, all of this stuff, or every single aspect of it, internal, external, coarse or fine, far or near, all of it is anicca. It's all in a state of change. That's what it's all doing. It's common characteristic, and then that's the gateway to wisdom. So then there's another particular teaching I was reflecting on today that sort of relates or talks about then if upekkha, that equanimity is one of these sublime emotional qualities, kind of abundant, exalted, immeasurable. So a great radiance of the heart. It's still a mind state. It's still a mood, if you like. It's an extremely refined and wholesome mood. But if it's developed and cultivated, then it leads to wisdom and to liberation. Just as, again, hopping back to the many of the other teachings, when the Buddha says, the four foundations of mindfulness, when they are completed, when they are developed and completed, they lead to the seven factors of enlightenment. That's how they ripen. They ripen and are fulfilled in the seven factors of enlightenment. And so that when this quality of equanimity or serenity is developed, that sense of stillness in the midst of change, it starts off at the most coarse level, like it's an attitude, and there's still very much a sense of me here in the midst of the 10,000 things, or me practicing vipassana, me experiencing all these different things, hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch is all going on, and there's me at the center. So there's a quality of stillness or steadiness and an openness of heart, not getting caught up in the whole array of different things, knowing the vibration and the kind of transient, turbulent quality, but the serenity is that stillness at the heart of things. So in another of the teachings that I was reflecting on reading today is Sutta number 137 in the Majjhima. Which don't be impressed because I looked it up today. I wouldn't have been able to quote the number off the top of my head, but it's number 137, and it's a teaching of the Buddha on the six senses. And in that, there's this very interesting piece about the different levels of upekkha, equanimity. And again, there's different ways these are read and interpreted, and I'm sure all kinds of scholars have and teachers have talked about them in different ways or interpreted them in different ways. But in terms of the practice, as I've used it, it seems to talk about a kind of refining of insight and a refining of that sense of the knower and the known and the development of wisdom, and as Lumpur Sumedho talks about so regularly, that quality of consciousness or awakened awareness, the freeing of that awakened awareness from its habits of attachment and entanglement. So the first level of upekkha in that teaching is called equanimity or serenity based upon diversity. So it's a sense of me here in the middle of this the array of experience, and there's the observer knowing all these different things. But there's so it's called an equanimity based on diversity. So it's quite personal, quite tangible, quite coarse in its own way. The second level is called equanimity or serenity, upekkha, based upon unity, and this is that sense of that quality of awareness or knowing or disentanglement being strengthened, and so that then, rather than the attention going to the details of the sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, thought, memory, imagination, mood, intention, etc., there's a unification of, so that's loka, the world, and so that it's in a way there's just the subject and the object, and that as we practice in the practice of insight meditation, this is very much a goal or a part of that process, strengthening that quality of knowing, and then letting go of the content of experience, just to know the process of experiencing. So we use those reflections on anicca, change, the kind of fluid, transient, vibratory quality of all experience. And then also reflecting on unsatisfactoriness, dukkha, and not self, as a way of supporting and kind of cultivating that disentanglement, that kind of non-identification. So that second level, the second of these two levels of upekkha is upekkha based upon unity. So, and again, this is just how I sort of read it, and it seems to make sense to me, is there's the subject and the object. The object is loka, the field of experience, whether it's the internal world of thoughts and memories and sensations of the body, or it's an external sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and so on, of what's so-called external world. That's all unified. It's just there's the one who knows and the world, the subject and the object. Then the third level is called the equanimity or upekkha based upon atamayata, is the Pali word, atamayata. Which literally means not made of that. And I've talked about this a few times, and I feel it's a very useful word. Ajahn Buddhadasa spent the last couple of years of his life, his teaching career, talking mostly about this quality of atamayata. And he said it was the ultimate Buddhist concept. And in a way, it represents, I would say, as I understand it, that most refined quality of wisdom, the heart fully awake and aware, uncluttered by identification or delusion. So it's translated into English, again, in various ways. So sometimes as non-fabrication. Ajahn Thanisaro, I think, translates it as non-fabrication. So in a way, referring to the object aspect of it. Bhikkhu Bodhi translates it as non-identification, referring to the subject side of it. I like to sort of put things together myself, and so I like it's a very clunky phrase, but subjectless, objectless awareness is an extremely clunky phrase, but it's that where the mind, the heart, is fully awake and is not creating a subject and an object, a knower here and a known there, but rather there is just the knowing. It's not a creating an identification. It's not creating a fabricated object or a fabricated knower, but rather there's this knowing, and that so equanimity based on atamayata, that non-identification, non-fabrication, is really where that upekkha has reached its fulfillment in the awakened heart. And also another of the lists that, again, to mention that again, the upekkha is the last on the list of the 7 factors of enlightenment. So in a way, it's like the first one on the list is mindfulness, sati. But the last one on the list is upekkha, so that again, it can be interpreted in different ways, but that quality of upekkha as a factor of enlightenment, I feel that in its fulfillment, when it's taken to its say most profound and is cultivated in the most complete and perfect way, then it's that unshakability of the awakened heart. It's that anenja, the unshakable deliverance of the heart. That unshakability is, I would say, the perfection of upekkha, and it's more than just a mood. It's more than just an attitude that's like an emotion state that arises and passes away, but rather it's a quality of the awakened heart that is freed from all identification, attachment to any quality whatsoever. There's a letting go of subject-object, and the heart is awake and fully knowing and attuned to experience without any delusion, any confusion, any distortion whatsoever. So if we look at the Buddha as the embodiment of the enlightened heart, the enlightened mind, the embodiment of that awakened, aware quality, then and I like to use that the sort of Buddha as an example. Then, because that speaking in this kind of way, sort of detachment, more detachment, even more equanimity, even more serenity. It's like, whoa! It's really getting sort of. It can sound like a sort of a dissociation or a sort of a disconnection or an abstraction, or sort of pulling out of or pulling away from, and then that having the effect of kind of not caring or being sort of disconnected or not, and not sort of fully attuned. But rather, if we look at the life of the Buddha, we see that profound unshakability of the heart, that perfection of equanimity, that unshakability, it manifested in his life as he loved the world so much, he let go of it totally, and the effect of that was that he was able to be incredibly skillful in helping what we think of as the world, the realm of living beings. And establishing teachings and principles and practices that ripple down to us. So here we are, 75, 80 people gathered in a building in Hertfordshire 2,500 years later, being genuinely and directly benefited by the effects of that equanimity, that total letting go, that total serenity. So when we talk about serenity or equanimity and that or that non-entanglement, that letting go, it's important to see that its result is not abstraction or dissociation or kind of not caring. It's a profound and total caring, but not a total and profound lack of disturbance, and undisturbed, undisturbable, unshakable. I think anenja, I believe, is the right Pali word for that. And so for us, here we are, gathered, living in this community, and working on our own hearts, our own minds, working on these lives and helping each other the best we can. So cultivating these wholesome qualities, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, equanimity, serenity, then I feel it's helpful to see that these are so important, so beneficial to us, that the entry points are always on a sort of personal and practical, tangible level, but they're fulfilled if they are cultivated to lead towards these aspects of wisdom as well. So that just as the Buddha, he loved the world so much, he let go of it completely, and thus his life was incredibly effective in helping the world, I would say, and establishing extraordinarily wholesome, beneficial, liberating principles in the world. So too with each other in our community, in our lives, to we can follow that example to love each other so much we let go of each other completely. If you really love someone, you let go of them completely. You don't create them or carry them around. It doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean you're not involved. We participate in each other's lives, but it's a participation that is unentangled. It's an attunement, so that, and it's sort of mysterious and ironic and strange way that it works. The more fully that the heart lets go and doesn't grasp and entangle in a skillful way, then the more effective we are in attuning to each other and to what each moment needs, and what can be contributed, and what's helpful to be doing, to be offering in each moment. So that that mysterious and wonderful, ironic way is that it's mostly by letting go, leaving, not carrying people around in our minds, that our love for each other and our concern, our well-wishing for each other is actualized. So I offer these thoughts for reflection this evening.